Welcome back to Hardball. In just 48 hours, Barack Obama and John McCain will speak at a faith forum hosted by Pastor Rick Warren at his Saddleback Church in California. We will have live coverage of that event right here on MSNBC. So, how many evangelicals are up for grabs in this election, and what do the candidates hope to gain politically from this event? Time Magazine's Amy Sullivan is the author of The Party Faithful, and Dan Gilgoff is the political editor of BeliefNet.com. Amy, Obama and McCain with Rick Warren on Saturday. What do we expect?
Well, we don't know what to expect. We've never seen anything quite like this before. And the fact that this is the first presidential meeting of these two candidates during the campaign, and it's at a megachurch with a Southern Baptist pastor asking the questions, is kind of unprecedented.
Dan, Rick Warren talks a lot about AIDS, global warming, poverty. Are these the big issues that are now front and center among faith voters, and wouldn't that tend to benefit Obama?
It seems that way. I mean, I think the fact that this forum is happening at all and that Rick Warren is the host for both parties, the candidates of both parties, tells you as much about the state of the evangelical movement today as it does about the candidates. I mean, Rick Warren was someone who in 2004 was basically campaigning for George W. Bush. Shortly after, I remember being on conference calls where he was supporting the Supreme Court nominations of George W. Bush. And these were about issues like abortion and same-sex marriage, the most divisive issues in the American electorate, really. Now here we are a few years later, and he's invited Barack Obama and John McCain to talk about not hot-button issues, but issues like poverty, the environment, and AIDS in Africa. So I think that Barack Obama sees a big open here, and whether he could take advantage of it is yet to be seen.
Dan, do you think that Rick Warren is looking for specific commitments from both McCain and Obama on those issues?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that he went out of his way to say beforehand that these weren't going to be gotcha questions. And I think what's really important to watch here is I think that someone like Rick Warren in this event is trying to do PR for the evangelical world. He doesn't want America to view the evangelical movement as a bunch of right-wingers and as a bunch of James Dobson acolytes. So I think what's important to watch for is as much of what Rick Warren is saying and how he's trying to portray evangelical politics, just as much as it is to see what John McCain and Barack Obama are saying.
Amy, I want to put up a poll that was done among white evangelicals. The breakdown was that they favored John McCain 68% to 24%. And what's so interesting about this is this almost identical to 4 years ago. Bush versus Kerry was 68 to 25. So is this simply the case of Barack Obama essentially can't lose by reaching out to religious conservatives, to Rick Warren, or simply to evangelicals?
Well, I think one of the things that Barack Obama is doing with his outreach to evangelicals is trying to reassure them that he wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if he was in the White House. I mean, there's established kind of long simmering tension between John McCain and the religious right. Certainly, there's not a lot of enthusiasm right now among white evangelicals for John McCain. We did a poll at Time just last week and found that a good 3 out of 10 supporters of John McCain among white evangelicals are unenthusiastic about his candidacy. And I think
in other words,
does
Obama win if those? In other words, does Obama win if those evangelicals simply stay home?
I think there's a good chance that he does. I mean, one of the things that the Bush campaign did in 2004 was not just do very heavy outreach to evangelicals and try to, I think, assure them that Bush was a man of faith who should be their preferred candidate, but they really drove up the turnout, and it was that turnout as much as anything else that really provided the margin of victory for Bush. I don't think McCain can count on anything that looks like that from 2004.
Now, both Barack Obama and John McCain have had problems with their pastors. There was Reverend Wright, who was Obama's spiritual advisor, who said inflammatory things about America. John McCain had problems with Pastor Hagee, who said inflammatory things about Catholics. Here's Obama trying to recover after Reverend Wright. Watch.
It is antithetical to our campaign. It is antithetical to what I am about. It is not what I think America stands for. And I want to be very clear that moving forward, Reverend Wright does not speak for me. He does not speak for our campaign. I cannot prevent him from continuing to make these outrageous remarks, but what I do want him to be very clear about, as well as all of you and the American people, is that when I say I find these comments appalling, I mean it.
Now, here's John McCain talking about Pastor Hagee, who was not his spiritual advisor, but simply somebody who had endorsed John McCain. Watch.
My church that I attend is the North Phoenix Baptist Church. My pastor and spiritual guide is Pastor Dan Urie. I've never been in Pastor Hagee's church or Pastor Parsley's church. I didn't attend their church for 20 years, and I'm not a member of their church. I received their endorsement, which did not mean that I endorsed their views. But the comments made most recently by Pastor Hagee are just too much.
Now, Dan, given the way that both McCain and Obama have had to sort of essentially separate themselves out from religious leaders, at least these two particular leaders, are there still questions, unanswered questions about John McCain's faith and about Barack Obama's faith, questions that Rick Warren's church might have?
Yeah, but I think there are different kinds of questions, and I think there are different kinds of issues or personalities that those two controversies revealed about each candidate. For Barack Obama, the entire problem was that he had associated for 20 years with his pastor. He had baptized his kids, married Obama to Michelle Obama, even blessed his house. So for Democrats who have a hard time proving that they are truly religious, truly people of faith, the one good thing that the Wright scandal did for him is it proved that he was indeed a frequent churchgoer and someone to whom faith was central. For the McCain controversy, it kind of illustrated the opposite tendency in McCain. He easily dismissed someone like Hagee, someone like Parsley, because he didn't know them very well. And what does that tell you? It tells you that he's not someone who's particularly close for the religious right. So I think that these controversies were both problematic for the candidates, but in a way it did something of a backhanded favor for Obama.
Amy, you mentioned the work that Barack Obama has done in trying to reach out to evangelicals, and that's largely been very different for the Democratic Party, at least compared to John Kerry 4 years ago, Al Gore 8 years ago. Given that he has tried very hard to make inroads and that his poll numbers are no better than John Kerry 4 years ago, doesn't that suggest that Obama's message is not working?
Well, you know, one of the things that is so different about 2004 is the real difference in the evangelical community is not necessarily along ideological lines. It's along generational lines. And that's not being picked up in polls. It certainly wasn't picked up in our poll in Time last week. When you look at older white evangelical voters, they're behaving about the same as they have been in the past. But it's the younger voters who are still very pro-life who are saying there are other issues that are priorities. And those are the issues, the same ones that Rick Warren is going to get into, whether it's poverty, whether it's the economy, whether it's the environment. And so he really has a chance to make some inroads with them. But we're also finding a lot more enthusiasm among Obama supporters in the evangelical community. In that same poll, you know, he may have less support, but his supporters are enthusiastic. And they're going to be running their first television ad in support of him, in fact, during the forum at Saddleback on Saturday.
Amy Sullivan and Dan Gilgoff, thank you both very much. And again, Barack Obama and John McCain will be together for the first time in this election. They will be at Rick Warren's Saddleback Church in California on Saturday night. We will have it live here on MSNBC from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time.